Think about the person who taught you your craft. The boss who threw you in the deep end and said, figure it out. The mentor who made you sit in on every client call, even just to take notes, and then asked you what you thought afterwards. The colleague who shows up and tells you what good judgment actually looks like, up close, over time, through repetition and failure, and the occasional spectacular disaster. And now ask yourself this: who is teaching that person who comes after you? Are you? Or is it now expected to be templatized in an AI knowledge base on the SharePoint server? Because here's the thing, and this is really unsettling when you start to sit with it. A lot of companies right now have quietly decided there is no person who comes after you. Hey, welcome back. I'm Robert Rose. This is episode 2 of a 4-part series we're building around CMI's 2026 Career and Salary Outlook research. It's a survey of more than 600 full-time marketing professionals. And last week, what I did was I talked about the ghost workforce. This is a phenomenon we're seeing where 76% of marketers are doing the work of more than one person, while only 5% of the organizations have actually replaced anybody with AI. Well, that gap, that's not a technology story. That's a management story. It's a restructuring story. And guess what? We're taking on more work and getting less resources to do it with. It's a very convenient alibi. It makes for a great press release, but it's tough. And this week's episode is about what happens downstream of that dynamic, because while the ghost workforce is present tense, you are living it right now, today, probably in between meetings. The empty pipeline that we'll talk about, it's a future tense problem, a slow moving one. I mean, it's not going to seem like a big crisis until one day it very much is. Our data show that 1 in 3 marketing organizations is actively reducing entry-level hiring right now. And they're doing it with a completely straight face, citing AI as the reason. Now, we talked about last week how those tasks are not getting subsumed into AI as much as they are the people who remain. But now I want to talk about why that logic of cutting off the entry-level ladder rung is short-sighted in a way that is going to genuinely be painful to watch play out, and why the people making these decisions will absolutely not connect those dots when the bill ultimately comes due. So here's a number that should be hanging on the wall of every marketing leadership meeting right now. Companies reducing entry-level hiring outnumber companies growing entry-level hiring by nearly 2.5 to 1. That produces what researchers call a net hiring score of negative 19.8 points for a junior level talent. Meanwhile, and this is the wonderful and yet simultaneously maddening part, organizations are net positive about growing their overall teams in 2026 and into next year. So the net score there is a positive 22.3 points. So there are positive signs that companies are realizing they need more marketing people firepower. They just specifically don't want it from people who are just starting out. Now, I've been in this industry for 30 years and I've seen this trend before. I can tell you firsthand that that combination of numbers is not a strategy. It's simply a bet. And it's a bet that I think is going to age very, very badly. Okay, let's talk about what is actually happening here, because there's a through line in the data that I think is more interesting than it first appears. So the reason companies give for cutting entry-level hiring is basically AI, the repeatable, automatable work, social post, report compilation, production calendar coordination, keyword research. All of that historically has been the on-ramp for junior marketers. Now AI can do it. Therefore, the argument goes, we don't need the junior marketers. And look, the first part of that sentence is not wrong. I mean, AI can genuinely absorb a lot of those tasks. I'm not here to argue that. The conclusion, though, that therefore we don't need the humans, well, that's where the logic goes completely sideways for me. Here's how I'd reframe it. As I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you that intelligent businesses have never hired junior marketers for what they could do on day one. Those tasks have always been automatable, outsourceable, or generic. You hired them for who you believed they would become on day 487 and 762. Good hiring, whether you're a startup or a Fortune 1000 company, is buying a long-term call option, to put it into stock market language, on talent, not a transaction for labor. And when you replace that option with a prompt, well, when you liquidate the junior role because the tasks that used to define it can now be handled by a tool or a robot, you are not optimizing your headcount. You are liquidating your future leadership pipeline. It's a very different thing, and it's much harder to rebuild than a spreadsheet makes it look. Now, as I said, I've seen a version of this movie before, and I suspect a lot of you Gen Xers and elder millennials in the audience, well, you have too. 15 years ago, there was this enormous pressure to hire so-called digital natives, young people who grew up with social media and smartphones and internet native communication, who intuitively understood the medium that older marketers had to consciously learn. And some of that logic was correct. Honestly, most of it was an excuse to hire cheap and move fast, and it was built on pretty shaky foundations. It was the idea that because someone used a platform like Twitter or Facebook recreationally meant that they understood it professionally. It's not unlike hiring me to fix your car. Just because I know how to drive and work the stereo does not mean I know how to change out the carburetor. What's happening right now looks like the exact reverse of that same pattern. Instead of chasing youth, companies are chasing what you might call the analog natives, right? The experienced practitioners who have built judgment over years of practice and can direct, evaluate, and when necessary, push back on AI rather than just compete with it. And I'll tell you, last month I was on a panel at South by Southwest Edu, the marketing education event, and I was on the panel with these marketing education leaders from universities. And what they told me was Fortune 500 executives are calling them to say they want graduates with soft skills, storytelling, strategy, critical thinking. And that sounds fantastic, right? I mean, that sounds like exactly the right instinct, right? Yeah, until you find out that those same organizations are only looking for those qualities in people with 5+ years of experience. They don't want to invest in developing these skills. They want to shop for pre-built marketers. And in the process, entirely without intending to, I'm sure, they cut off the bottom rung of the ladder that they once climbed. And here's the part that really gets me. The research shows that 75% of employed marketers say it's significantly or somewhat more challenging to find a marketing job than it was 2 years ago. And the reasons they give read like a structural dismantling of marketing's front door. The first, more competition. Because layoffs are flooding the market, fewer vacancies, because economic uncertainty and AI are making companies reduce headcount spots. AI-driven resume screening that filters people out before a human ever sees their name, and a consolidation of roles that now require the breadth of 3 jobs for one salary. Entry-level candidates are getting hit by all 4 of those things at once. The competition is stiffer, the openings are fewer, the ATS system is screening them out without ever looking at them, and the few roles that do exist require skills that used to take 3 people to cover. So average job search time is now 5.2 months, up from 3.1 months in 2024. And this is the part that doesn't get said enough. That number only counts people who have found something. The people still searching aren't in that average. So let me talk about what we might do about this for both sides of the equation. So for marketing leaders, the first thing is to actually audit whether AI is doing entry-level work and whether it's doing it well. There is a massive gap between AI can technically produce this output, and AI produces this output without requiring significant human revision. If your junior free workflow is generating content that a more experienced person then has to substantially rework, that efficiency is illusory, right? The case for the eliminating a human who would have done it right the first time is a lot weaker than it looks on that org chart. Second, and I know full-time headcount is genuinely constrained for a lot of businesses right now, consider structured alternatives, internships, apprenticeships, project-based contracts, cohort programs. These don't carry the same fixed cost as full-time hires, but they keep the formation pipeline moving. The goal isn't cheap labor. The goal is making sure that people are gaining experience today that makes your team more capable and wise in 3 years. And third, think carefully about who you're putting in front of AI tools without sufficient evaluation capacity. The whole AI replaces entry-level tasks model still requires someone who knows whether the AI did the task well. That requires expertise. And if you're not developing that expertise at the junior level, at some point, you're going to have an entire marketing team running AI systems that no one on the team has the background to actually evaluate. You won't know there's a problem until something goes completely sideways. That's hard to explain to a client or a CEO or a board. For marketing practitioners in particular, first of all, no, I see you. I get it. And I want to be honest, the front door is genuinely harder to find right now. The average job search, as I said, is over 5 months. There are phantom job postings everywhere. Our research respondents mentioned them repeatedly, describing roles on LinkedIn as old or fake. The struggle is extremely real. But here's what the data suggests actually might work. First, build visible work, not just credentials. In a market where AI generated content is everywhere and the automated resume systems are filtering your resume out before a human sees them, evidence of actual judgment and craft and work stand out. A genuine point of view on an industry question, a content project with a real audience, even a small one, a case study from a freelance or volunteer work. These signal something that a diploma and a skills list on a resume simply cannot, and it will start to show up as experience. Look at the adjacent entry points. Agency roles, smaller organizations, they're typically less likely to have cut junior hiring than larger enterprises. Start somewhere small. That's not a consolation prize. It's frequently where you learn more and faster and with more visibility into how the whole operation works. And use freelance work strategically. 22% of currently employed full-time marketers are now freelancing on the side, but it's not primarily for the money. It's to keep their networks warm, their skills current. That same logic applies to someone trying to break in. Even a small client project produces portfolio material and professional references that a resume alone can't replicate. So let's come back to where we started. Think about the person who taught you your craft, the one who threw you into the deep end, the one who made you sit in on the calls and then asked what you thought, the one who invested in who you might become rather than what you could produce on day one. And I want to say something direct on that because I think it matters. In 2026, this isn't just a talent supply problem. Oh, it's that for sure, but it's also a representation problem. Entry-level hiring has historically been the most accessible point of entry into this profession. It's where people without the right network, without the right prestigious school name, without a relative in the business to get their foot in the door. When companies shift to experienced only, they pull up the ladder behind them, usually without meaning to and often without noticing. The organizations that think around this corner right now, that keep the pipeline moving, that invest in the option rather than just the transaction, those are the ones that are going to have something genuinely valuable in 3 years, a mid-level talent bench that their competitors are desperately scrambling to find. The bill on the short-sighted bet will come due. It always does. The only question is whether you're the one holding it when it arrives or the one who saw it coming before. My full piece is linked below. Read the whole thing. There's data and nuance there that I didn't have time to cover here, and it's worth sitting with. Until then, it's your story. Don't forget that helping someone begin theirs is also a way to tell it well. I'll see you next week.